Coming up, one last look before we head into the weekend matchup between the New York Football Giants hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Some very positive injury updates. Not official, but I think we can read the tea leaves there. We'll take a look at the betting lines. Andy will give you his bet of the week and so much more coming up next. Yes, friends. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, on a Friday morning, live on YouTube, where, of course, we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Arbrecht, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets on the Locked On Nets podcast. My boy, Doug Norrie. And yonder there, you're going to find Mr. Andrew Makowitz, the healthy, wealthy, and wise, and dulcet-toned gentleman to my right.
Yes. Adam, who would have thought we're in week 6 where we thought the Giants may be buried? We thought, the listeners were thinking that maybe you'd have an eye on your Nets podcast doing the Locked On Nets, but instead you are forced back into a 4-1 potential playoff team in the New York Giants.
Well, let's make something very clear here. Obviously, I'm a man of many talents. I cover a lot of different bases, but even in the darkest of times, my dedication to this podcast remains ever strong and forward thinking, though it is better. It is better when the Giants are 4-1. We're obviously going to talk about, we said, Wan'Dale Robinson, Leonard Williams, some really positive news, at least indications that there could be trending towards playing on Sunday. But first, last night's Thursday night football game. It's what I like to call a crap fest. You go out there.
Is that an official term? Is that how you use that?
If you're inside the bowels of the NFL, that actually goes out on a lot of letterheads. When they were doing the schedule ahead of the season, Roger Goodell said, "Listen, we'll do. We're going to look down the list here. We're trying to get the Chiefs a nice key matchup here. We'll talk about maybe putting the Tom Brady on the schedule over there. But then in week 6, I think we kick things off with the crap fest, guys. What did you say? NFC East team, the Washington Commanders, and the Chicago Bears, who the Giants played earlier this season in what they call a drag-out battle, 12-7. Boy, howdy, was that depressing.
Oh, man. And the Bears had every opportunity to win that game. The Bears should have won that game. I watched every snap, unfortunately, on the couch, and I was like, man, is there something better on Netflix that I should be doing? Because this is terrible. We had missed field goals. Adam, the Bears were winning with about 7 minutes to go. And, it's like 4th and 1. And Washington's like, well, we'll punt the ball at midfield because that's what teams do this time of year, is be not aggressive and trust your quarterback, and we punt the ball away. And, of course, it ricochets off of Velus Jones's face mask. They recovered at the 2-yard line, and they go in and score a touchdown, and that was the end of the game. The craziest thing to me is the Bears had the ball inside the Commanders' 5-yard line 3 different times, 3 different possessions, and walked away with a total of 0 points. Like, do you know how hard that is to do? Like, think about how bad the offensive scheme and play calling and execution has to be inside the 5 3 times and walk away with literally no points.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it wasn't good. I'm gonna put it to you that way. I don't have a ton of follow-up thoughts. I think Andy really encapsulated it great there. The one thing I will say, coming out of this game, I had a couple of thoughts, including even the idea, because you've seen this a lot now. You mentioned that 4th down thing and punting from midfield, not trusting your quarterback and going for it. However, this year has been a really big sample size where coaching staffs seem to be getting confused about analytics, what it means, when you should, when you shouldn't, what the right decision is to make. And now we're starting to see that thing where they go, no, because by the numbers, when they F it up, when they punt, maybe they should have gone for it. Or when the Baltimore Ravens, when you are in a situation to kick a field goal and guarantee the game will go on, and you go, nah, we're going to go ahead and go for it, and then be losing and be, I'm sorry. The analytics are starting to F with coaches' minds now, and they're finding themselves in the crosshairs in post-game press conferences trying to explain what they were thinking, when reality is, to give a pat on the shoulder to the Giants, it's about being prepared. It doesn't matter which way you want to go with it, whatever, but having a sense of preparedness in those moments is what allows you to say, this is what we're doing. And then it does come down to the execution. When it looks sloppy and you mess up, you're going to get absolutely lambasted in the post game. If you don't get it when you go for it and it looks like a good play and something doesn't work out right, that's okay. These guys look like they're shooting from the hip 90% of the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because and I've heard this on Twitter and a couple other places. It's like these coaches have the analytics and they use it most of the time, and then like they just don't understand the gut feeling or momentum piece of it. And the Giants have figured that out. It's like their their default is to go with the analytics and make sure that they understand where they need to be and what they need to do. But against Tennessee, going for it, going for two, trying to win the game on the road is something that we always think about. But it's also like a momentum builder. Like you got to understand time, distance, circumstance, atmosphere. Analytics don't always bring that in. Like if the backup quarterback is hurt and they have a punter playing QB, it must skew the analytics slightly in terms of whether or not you should go for it. But to that point, Adam, it's been very difficult to watch some of these guys. Like Brandon Staley going for it at his own 46-yard line up to like he's 5 yards
yeah,
away.
The Chargers, a great example. It was like, what are we talking about here? That's what I mean. That's
like
what I mean.
Your offense, you're going for it on fourth down with a couple minutes left, and like if you don't get it, the opposing team needs to get 5 yards to be in field goal range, or you can punt it and the other offense has to go 50 yards. It's like what are we doing here?
And that's the exact example, though, right? Because you're talking about Washington punting the ball at midfield. They're winning the game. Again, this is what I mean. Analytics has now created this weird swirl in everyone's minds of, well, in today's NFL, 4th and 1 from that spot, you go for it because you put away the game if you get it. I get that. And yet, when you look over at something like the Chargers and you go, that's what warps their head. They go, oh, well, yeah, in today's NFL, a short distance, we go for it. Yeah, we go for it. Like, unless you're up by 2 points and you effectively could lose a game, which they should have if not for a missed field goal, right? So all these things come into play. The other thing I take away from this to tie it into the New York Football Giants, as we like to do on the One Giant podcast, is that QB play. So here's my perception. The Giants are 4-1, and we love every win that they're getting. The other thing that I think is happening right now, as often does in the NFL, there are ebbs and flows to the way the game is getting played, where the success is coming from. And it seems like this year, by and large, outside of those handful of exclusively elite talents like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and you can even put Justin Herbert, obviously, even Lamar Jackson at times, who the Giants will see on Sunday, mostly the quarterback play has been pretty bad or average at best. And it doesn't seem like teams are quite making the adjustment to, hey, maybe it's a little bit more defensively driven year this year, right? Maybe we got to lean to that side of the ball. Maybe the big risk rewards don't need to happen here. Maybe we can rein in some of these go for it heavy analytics that say it's always the answer, because we're seeing some really interesting results around the league. And when you watch a guy like Carson Wentz and you watch a guy like Justin Fields, it at least makes you think, again, I'll come back to not just the coaching staff for the Giants and Daniel Jones of going, well, at least we're talking about a team that they could be doing the same thing right now. They could have started in week 1 and been like, Daniel Jones, grip and rip it, brother, and set ourselves up for real disaster and real criticism. Instead, play smart football, play all 3 phases, and put yourself in position to win games.
It's so funny that you say that, Adam, because I was thinking something really similar along those lines. Is like, unless you have an elite talent at quarterback, like
the way show notes, I don't know.
Yeah, did you peek a little bit? It's unbelievable how you have teams like the Cleveland Browns. They could technically be undefeated right now if they weren't being so cavalier with their quarterback throwing picks in the red zone with 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe they should have just handed the ball off to Nick Chubb a couple more times. Maybe they should have handed it off to Kareem Hunt. And I think Daniel Jones gets criticized for how limited they are in terms of his mistakes. But look at what the results are on the field. Look at the Dallas Cowboys with Cooper Rush. It's like he's completing 61% of his passes, but guess what? He has 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 95 passer rating. It's like, okay, they may not be telling him to air it out on all plays, but the Cowboys are winning games. And I don't understand why that continues to be an indictment when it's like, these players are playing within the scheme, and they're doing everything to put their team in a position to win and not lose the game, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's a great example. The Cooper Rush thing in Dallas, right? They're 4-1, big matchup this weekend. The Giants with a win combined with an Eagles loss to the Cowboys, and we're all in that beautiful dance at the top of the NFC East. But this is where I think not remotely trending negative here, but nobody thinks that Cooper Rush is a franchise quarterback, and yet what you're seeing is, oh, this is your path to success. And then when you have a plus quarterback like Dak Prescott in there, maybe don't ask him to do everything in the world and don't put it all in his hands and all on his shoulders, and then just let him have his moments, right? Pick his spots to be truly elite in those things. In that way, like that's what I think Daniel Jones is building towards, right? Is, hey, buddy, we're not telling you that you need to be the sole reason that we win football games. You got to, you don't have to be Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes. But if you can be a guy that stays neutral and doesn't give us negative plays for 80% of a game, and then when the moments call for it, use your legs, use your arm, and put us in spots to win ball games. Again, I think it's why in this season in particular, Daniel Jones, who is now, if I'm not mistaken, 10th in completion percentage in the league, he's now 14th in overall QBR. So I think you're seeing, right, some violent pendulum swings around the league, game to game, week to week for different quarterbacks. For Daniel Jones and the Giants overall, it's just been about, hey, slow and steady. We'll stay in our lane here. We're not going to try to be something we're not, and we're going to give ourselves just a chance to win ball games. And that's what we're hoping for here when we talk about the Ravens.
I think the tough part, and we're going to bring it back to Daniel Jones again, is you see Dan Orlovsky being like, I think they're getting enough credit, but Daniel Jones only has 3 touchdowns on the year. The only stats that he's better than any other starting quarterback is Justin Fields. But when you go into like his QBR rating, you go into his completion percentage, you go into his efficiency, his EPAs in terms of points added, all of the advanced metrics say that he is doing all of the right things when asked upon. And I think all of those arguments are lazy because, Adam, I could very simply sit here to you and say, is there a quarterback controversy in Philly? Should Gardner Minshew be starting ahead of Jalen Hurts? You'd be like, that's insane. Jalen Hurts is like a top 5 MVP candidate. I'd be like, but he's only thrown 4 touchdowns in 5 games, Adam.
Well, yeah. See, I'll push back on you a little bit here. I think it's lazy to only look at those certain stats, like to say he's thrown 3 touchdowns. Like that's not good enough because to your point, you can look at Jalen Hurts. However, I think then when you say the eye test, that's why Jalen Hurts is having the season he's having and why you're not necessarily talking about Daniel Jones in the same vein. I don't think it's not a matter of can you be successful or not, but I think, again, in the spectrum of levels, I think, Daniel Jones is doing exactly what the Giants need him to do and potentially is building towards outperforming that expectation here as the season moves along. And if you got to a point where you thought this Giants team was capable of deep playoff runs and winning championships, in this moment right now, you'd say, hey, I'll take the play of Jalen Hurts over Daniel Jones if I think I want to go win a championship. And that's not, I know it's not what's being debated here. And I overall, I take your point of, hey, there's a lot of, by the way, Daniel Jones is having a better season than Aaron Rodgers, right? Like things like that, statements like that matter because in a season like this, that is true. And that is the difference between the Giants being 2-3 versus 4-1. And it's why you see the Packers in the spot they are right now. You asked that question of me a couple weeks ago. Who would you rather have right now, Daniel Jones or Aaron Rodgers? I still, you still sit here and say the upside of what Aaron Rodgers has proven himself to be is what you go with. And yet, if the Green Bay Packers had taken a Daniel Jones quarterback style approach to the game against the Giants in London, they probably win that game. And that's the difference, right? The expectations are pushing teams to do and ask more than maybe they should, whereas Daniel Jones is getting to play that comfortable growth role, and that combines everything. Expectations, new regime, new coaching staff. I think it's the perfect balance right now for so many players on the Giants to have incremental success.
It does strike me how coaching matters just so much in the NFL. Like we
forgot this, right? We forgot this because the Giants didn't have any coaches for the last 4 or 5
It's been insane. We're like, oh, it's fine with Joe Judge. We like Joe Judge. Jason Garrett's conservative, but that's okay. And
even Patrick Graham. I
know.
Not a bad coach, but the difference of being a guy that really moves the needle.
Well, and to that point, it's like we were just okay with mediocrity because we were afraid of what like the bottom feels like. We didn't realize how close to the bottom we actually were with the way that we were being coached. You look at Wink Martindale, you look at Mike Kafka and the game plans and the schemes that he is creating. he just seems to have a pulse on the offense that we clearly have not had in at least half a decade, Adam. Like he sees and he understands. You saw when he was doing those runs with Saquon Barkley against the Bears. Like he looked at the all 22 in real time, was like, oh, if we can bring Daniel Jones back out to the outside, there's no one that's protecting against that. Let's utilize that play. It's those in-game changes that have changed everything. The Giants are outscoring their opponents in the second half in their wins by over 30 points. Like, so the coaches
I think it's almost
matter.
closer to 40, right? It was like 72-39, right?
Yeah, I
Something
think
like
it was, yeah, it was like 35, 40 points in totality. But yeah, Adam, at halftime, these coaches are making adjustments and the Giants are coming out and winning games. Coaching matters more in the NFL than it does in any other league, I'm convinced.
Okay, so one last look then at this game when we talk about the Baltimore Ravens Sunday matchup. You just mentioned it's a great stat that the Giants are outscoring teams in the second half. Now, by that metric, you would think that the Giants are winning games by 2 scores. They're not, because they're also finding themselves down 10 points against the Packers going into halftime, right? In-game adjustments are fantastic, and I love that they're able to do that. The question for now, well, not the question for now, always becomes every single week, we're coming into a matchup where, again, I'll take my coaching staff over the Ravens coaching staff in totality. I like what we've been able to do. I'm confused by what they're not necessarily doing with Lamar Jackson. Before we get into the betting lines and our predictions, just what is your key matchup that you're looking at here? Because we can also pause, remind everybody that Wan'Dale Robinson, Leonard Williams both look like they're trending in the direction of playing. And I think it's important to mention that because in a lot of ways, those might be the 2 key players to highlight on each side of the ball for the Giants.
Oh, my key to the game. I know this is going to sound crazy because we've only seen it for 1 week, but it's going to be Darius Slayton again. Darius Slayton made a tremendous impact in that Packers game.
Yes, sir.
When the backs were against the wall for that wide receiver room and Daniel Jones needed like a pressure valve release to be able to come across. And you saw the scheme. I saw the chart of the routes that he ran. There were so many crossing routes coming across. They realized that Daniel Jones didn't have enough time to get vertical, that they just had these crossing routes that were all timing to dump it off to gain 5, 7, 10, 12 yards. Darius Slayton was awesome in the game against the Packers. Like that was his best game clearly of the season, but it's been one of his best games that we've seen from him in a while. I think the key to the game is for him to be able to continue to build on the success he had against the Packers, be that security blanket for Daniel Jones, because there will be passes to be had in this game.
Yeah, I find it interesting because, and just listen, we always say you use whatever metric you can get your hands on. Effectively, it's a 1-game sample size for Darius Slayton. In case you're wondering, though, he played to a 76 PFF grade. He has 9 targets, 7 catches for 90 yards on the season. All of that work primarily being done in this past week. It matters, and this is why, like, the dovetail off of that is if Wan'Dale Robinson, who indicated that he's trending towards it, he's feeling good, he thinks he's going to play on Sunday. If he gets out there as well, what's really nice about it is, like, I'm not going to sit here and say, and now all of a sudden you go to Richie James and, Wan'Dale Robinson handling everything over the middle and get Darius Slayton on the outside. It's just nice to know you can add in another wrinkle, right? Wherever you're going to have to line these guys up, we know we're going to work in the tight end group as well. I do get excited about the idea of, especially with Saquon Barkley, it's kind of this thing pushed underneath the rug that he does have a shoulder issue going on right now. Can you afford to go 25, 30 carries with him again? Or are you going to need a little bit of help? And that's where I think Wan'Dale Robinson, some of those jet sweeps, maybe line him up in the backfield with Saquon Barkley, take some pressure off of him and still be a dynamic playmaker. So wide receiver room is going to be the focus, I think, overall, as we say. And the Baltimore Ravens, they have talent in their secondary. They've been very exposable in both phases of the game right now defensively. Interesting to see how Mike Kafka chooses to approach that. And in some ways, Darius Slayton, a lot of over the middle work. It's like, yes, now don't go back to that well immediately. Let's see if we can't create another wrinkle for them. On the other side, we mentioned Leonard Williams. You had highlighted this in our pre-show. He said he was happy that they actually held him out the extra week, probably needed it, even though he wanted to go. So you're pushing towards him going in this one. Dexter Lawrence has been playing at a very high level. I don't have the snap count officially in front of me here. I know that he played a ton over the last few weeks in the absence of Leonard Williams. And I got to say, we've often looked at those numbers and we get it. There's situational football that happens here for Dexter Lawrence. And yet, the more he plays, it seems like the bigger his impact becomes. So we always think about the wear down effect if the other team is running the ball consistently, wearing you out, maybe Lamar Jackson in space, sideline to sideline, right? But hey, there's a wear down effect. When you're a big boy like Dexter Lawrence, you are also punishing the offensive line of the Baltimore Ravens. So I like what he's been able to do. If Leonard is out there in any capacity, you have to like the improved ability there, along with Jalen Smith, along with Kayvon Thibodeau. Still questionable for Azeez Ojulari, but I can go right to Oshane Ximines and continue to feather those guys in. I like the pressure that we can create and hopefully contain Lamar.
Yeah, you mentioned Dexter Lawrence playing at such a high level, playing so many snaps with Leonard Williams out. They've needed him. And Adam, before the season, the Giants had two critical decisions on picking up fifth-year options between both Dexter Lawrence and Daniel Jones. We projected that they would not pick up Daniel Jones, and we projected that they should pick up Dexter Lawrence because
Yeah.
these types of guys don't grow on trees. You've already lost defensive linemen in the past to other teams. Look at Austin Johnson last year. The going rate for these guys is almost $10 million if they're playing effective. So being able to lock him up on a team-friendly deal for another year is huge for the Giants. And we talked at length yesterday about the power run game of the Ravens. It is their specialty. For good or for bad, Adam, I think they should open it up
Right.
more, but that
Right.
is the scheme that they are going to go with. Greg Roman likes to bring an extra tight end, likes to bring an extra running back in. He likes the power formation. They are going to try to wear down this defensive line. Getting a fresh and healthy Leonard Williams back when they want to run the football against this type of team is a huge win for the Giants.
And by the way, remember, DJ Davidson is not going to be there for the Giants anymore. I know he's a rookie, but just in terms of fresh bodies, you've lost one of those components there. So for sure, getting back healthy, fresh legs is important for the Giants. A couple interesting things here. This is a little bit of a side note. We're going to talk about this more in the bye week, but Jonathan over in the chat mentions, does the Giants' great schemes, and I'll say coaching, does it make it harder to judge these players? It doesn't matter right now. I think it's pretty easy to look at certain guys and say, oh, the coaching staff is elevating you by putting you in really good spots. The measurables and the skill sets of different guys, you can look at them and say, Marcus Johnson's getting mentioned here, had a nice week against the Packers, obviously coming off the street. Do we all of a sudden sit here and go, maybe Marcus Johnson is the future number 3 starter for the Giants? No, but you can be functional. Schemes matter, and you can really get guys into positive positions by the way that you execute. So, yeah, a lot of the praise is going to go on the coaching side of things, but from a developmental standpoint, there are a lot of players that are taking seismic leaps underneath this coaching staff. And just to touch back on Dexter one last time, again, I hate to do it, but metrics are important here. 7 assists, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 12 solo tackles. Those are going to be tackles, 13th, assists, 5th, sacks, 7th, tied for first there with forced fumbles at the position. And oh, by the way, a near 90 PFF grade. We haven't been able to talk that glowingly about Dexter Lawrence over the start of his career. So that 5th-year option, guess what, man? That really matters. We don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now, but it means we get a pretty nice value on Dexter Lawrence next season and give ourselves some time to sort that out.
Yeah, he's been playing tremendous, Adam. He's been playing at an all-pro level. Aaron Rodgers on the McAfee show said his lineman said that dude is one of the top 5 interior linemen in the league, and he doesn't get enough shine. So shout out to Dexter Lawrence. He is going to make a huge impact in this game. Teaming him up with Leonard Williams again is going to be a problem for Baltimore, knowing that their offensive line is not what it was in 2019 when Lamar Jackson had his MVP season.
And just quickly here, obviously Lamar Jackson has an impact on this stat, but the Baltimore Ravens do lead the league with 5.5 yards per carry average on the season. So dynamic inside the tackles, obviously the scramble ability of one Lamar Jackson. Before we get into our predictions here, Andrew, why don't we go ahead and take a look over at Andy's Bet of the Week?
So I apologize to all the listeners. Last week I had the Giants getting 4.5 in the first half. I thought they would keep it close. I thought that was going to be the way the game went. And I was just off. I could have given any other Giants bet. I'm very frustrated, and I apologize for that one. And that's why this one is going to be a makeup one. I feel really good about this one. I really, really do, Adam. And that is going to be taking the over in Daniel Jones passing yards. I feel this one in my veins.
What's the mark at?
Well, let me talk about it. Let me talk it up a little bit.
It's your corner. It's Andy's bet corner of the week. It's my bad. That's my bad.
It looks like we're going to be getting Wan'Dale Robinson back. Huge ability to be, get shifty in space. Has the ability to break off a large chunk play. Could help that number get bigger. We saw Darius Slayton kind of settle in the role that we hoped that he would be in. had a bunch of big catches last week. You look at those two guys, Richie James will pitch in just a little bit. And obviously you have Daniel Bellinger, as the tight end that's going to be able to make plays. Adam, the over-under is 201.5. So can Daniel Jones get the 202 passing yards? My answer to this is yes, and it's two reasons. One, we talked about it at length yesterday. Baltimore has the worst pass defense in the entire NFL. They give up 292 passing yards per game. They can be had in the air. The second reason, Adam, is the Baltimore Ravens put up a lot of points on offense, which means you have to be able to throw the ball in the air. The Baltimore Ravens average 27.5 points a game, which means the Giants are going to have to put points up. I don't believe this is a 10-9 game. It's going to be a game in the 20s, and the Giants are going to have to score. While they will rely on Saquon Barkley, they are going to have to move the ball through the air, and I'm putting my money on Daniel Jones getting over 200 yards.
I don't hate it because 201 just seemed like such a feeble number to get to. And we know that Daniel Jones hasn't always gotten there and the offense is constructed a certain way, etc. I don't hate the idea of like one of those big plays, right? We haven't seen it. Stretching the ball down the field, Darius Slayton, you mentioned Wan'Dale Robinson, even taking some 15, some 3-yard passes and making them 15 to 20-yard chunk plays. My only concern is the Baltimore Ravens defense is not particularly good, but they do have some ball hawks in the secondary. And I don't mean that concerning in terms of, is it going to be interceptions here potentially? Concerning that the Giants offensively may, again, take that slow and steady approach. I think the big factor in your favor here is that Saquon Barkley, again, the shoulder, I think there could be a little bit of gamesmanship here in terms of showing enough of them, using him enough early, and not necessarily showing your cards that we only want to use him for 15, 16 carries in this game as opposed to 30, right? So maybe they play a little bit of game of chicken there. I'll be interested to see. I think another week healthy. Do you have in front of you where Daniel Jones rushing over-under is at?
I think the last I saw was like 31 was the number that I saw, but it can change at a moment's notice.
So I don't hate that one though. Anything around 30, I would take the over on the rushing yards. A week removed from the ankle injury, right? He looked healthy enough to scram. I mean, frankly, he got over 30 yards last week with probably a suspect ankle just by taking those little chunk plays in and around the line of scrimmage. So even if he, I think, had 10 carries, 35 yards last week, give me, 7 or 8 carries in this game, a couple of little scoots here. While no one's ever going to confuse Daniel Jones for Lamar Jackson, this is a game where you have two quarterbacks that you would say, hey, what's your best first weapon? Your legs. That's going to be really fun to watch. Where's
31.5? 31.5.
Taking the over. Take that over, baby.
It was Daniel Jones. 31.5. I just checked.
Take that over, man. You get over to betstamp.com. Obviously, frankly, the episode is brought to you by BetStamp, and you can see the best place to lay your money across all of the different betting apps. You know that you're going to get those best possible odds, so be sure to check out over on betstamp.com. Now, Andy, where's the over-under on this game, and do you want to give your prediction first, or would you like yours truly to take the helm? Obviously, coming off of last week, where I did call for and achieved the Giants victory in London, while Andy, true blue fan that he is, did not believe in the New York Football Giants.
I unfortunately picked them to lose. You were right on this one. I was wrong. You're smart. I'm not. You're very good looking. I'm not so attractive. Getting lost in the sauce.
Enough. Yeah, that was enough. Yeah.
Was that good enough? That was good.
Yeah,
okay.
I feel good.
So the over under in the game right now is 45.5, and the Giants line has moved from the Giants getting 4.5 to the Giants getting 6 points. So everyone is betting heavy right now on the Baltimore Ravens. Adam, why don't you go first? 45.5, Giants getting 6. What do you like? What are your predictions? How do you think this is going to go?
45.5. I did not think that I was going to be in this place coming into this prediction. I've been trying to be even keeled all season long, as I like to do. But I actually am going to take the New York Football Giants to win this game. I think that we're just approaching this threshold here, right? Every single week we talk about, now it's the test with the Green Bay Packers. Well, they're not the Green Bay Packers that we've seen before. And the Baltimore Ravens may get there ultimately, but they're struggling with their offensive coordinator. They don't have a lot of wide receiver weapons. Hey, knock, knock. Like, look who's there. It's the Giants. But their defense has weapons. They have Patrick Queen in the middle. They have veteran JPP who just started a game last week for them. They have guys. They have who's the old vet there in the middle for them as well. Calais Campbell is in there, right? But all of these players, it's all happening. There's a bit more of a growth trajectory, I think, here for the Ravens right now. They could be 4-1, just like the Giants. They could be 5-0 right now, but they're not. And they're not, and the Giants are 4-1. I'm taking the Giants to win this game. I think if Wan'Dale Robinson is out there, it just opens up a little bit more for this offense. I think it's another step forward for Daniel Jones in his developmental progression, where we start to say, maybe in a game like this, you need to do even more of the lifting here. And I'm going to look for the Giants to control the tempo. I don't know if those deep plays will be there, but nice sustained drives. Keep everything in front of you defensively. Wink Martindale came out and said, I don't care about it being a revenge game. It's just another game. And also, I think that he wants to make a statement here, and the best way to make that statement is to have your defense play consistently. I think they keep it closer in the first half than they have in recent weeks. I'll even go as far as to say maybe the Giants are leading at halftime, which changes the dynamic here as well. Give me the New York Football Giants. Give me a Daniel Bellinger touchdown in this one. I'm taking Big Blue 24-17.
Adam, I love it. The only thing I don't like about that prediction is I think that you're not giving this Giants offense enough credit. I am done until I see otherwise doubting this coaching staff and this team. Remember, the Packers aren't a great defense, but they're a good they're a solid defense. They're middle of the road. The Giants put up 27 points against that defense. I think that based on how bad the secondary has played for the Baltimore Ravens and how much that offense can manufacture points, I think this is going to be a little bit more higher scoring than potentially you do. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to doubt the Giants. I can't. After what I saw last week, the coach is putting all the players in the right position. I think that there's a bigger advantage to Wink Martindale knowing Lamar Jackson than Lamar Jackson knowing Wink Martindale in this one. Yep. And so I think the defense will have a slight advantage. I've got the Giants outscoring what their average points per game are based on the Baltimore defense being pretty bad. I've got the Baltimore Ravens scoring a little bit less than what their season average is based on Wink
You're taking a bit of a gap here.
I'm taking the Giants 27-23 in a higher scoring game, but take the Giants outright until further notice. I'm not going to have any of this. This is the worst 4-1 team, or we start hating on the team that we just previously beat. Because we know if Baltimore struggles, they'll be like, oh, well, they're a 3-3 team. They're not a Super Bowl contender. It's like, no one's saying this going into any of these games. And then the Giants miraculously win, and now all of a sudden these teams are bad. I'm not here for it. The Giants win this game outright, and the 5-1 train continues to the playoffs, Adam.
Hey, listen, you win this game, and we said it getting to 4-1, the way that changed playoff predictions and then the odds here. You win this game, you really start to put yourself fully into the driver's seat. To your point, man, it doesn't need to be that these teams aren't as good anymore. At a minimum, you need to start to say that the Giants are better, right? When you get to 4-1, when you get to 5-1, even right now in this moment, hey, okay, they're not, not the sexiest team in the world. Okay, why don't you be 4-1? I don't see a lot of other people doing it, right? Like I don't see you doing it. Like in a lot of ways, like I hate to be, I'm not that guy when it comes to this stuff, but it's like, I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry. You're casting dispersions around my team being 4-1. Why don't you go out and win some ball games? I got plenty of teams I can point to. I can point to the LA Rams and say, you won the Super Bowl last year. Why you look like crap? I can point to the Arizona Cardinals and say, you're desperately trying to get yourself back to 500. You have arguably a far better quarterback and far better weapons and a more dynamic, whatever. It's like, go screw. At a certain point, I don't care anymore. The Giants are 4-1, and this is a game that normally I would have said, oh, maybe this is kind of a little bit of a snake bite game for them. Instead, I think they can get it done. And listen, we'll come out the backside of this, look at the game, win or lose, and continue to take away the positive this team is growing on. But let's hope for a big blue victory. I think this is one of the few times Andy and I tend to flip-flop which way we think the team is going, win or lose. Instead, we come out on the same side of it. Obviously, I'll take the majority of the credit because I went first in the selection.
I like that. Yeah.
If they're to lose, Andy clearly got me confused during the course of the episode. You go over to YouTube, though, friends. This is where you can do it. Marty's been in here having a great time. He's calling for a 30-28 New York Football Giants victory. So a little, closer to your higher scoring game there. Everybody in on the action, though, we appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of these live sessions. Subscribe, share it with your friends. Tell your friends. You know what I mean? Get out there. Shout it out to the people. OGP on YouTube. And then you get over to the podcast feed, wherever you get those needs fulfilled. And until next time, which will be following a New York Football Giants victory on Sunday at home over the Baltimore Ravens, as Andy Mackowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.